Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Getting Started with Foreign Rights. I'm Lindsay Jones. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DropCap. I just want to take a moment before I start to let you know to feel free as we go along to drop any questions in the chat. I'll save time at the end to answer as many questions as I possibly can. Try to keep the presentation to about 20 minutes so that we have some time for questions and we can all get out of here during our lunch break after 30 minutes. So without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. So first off, I just want to give you some background on who we are at DropCap. I know some people attending may already work with us. For some of you, you may have just heard about us, so I like to give you some background. We started life as a tech-enabled rights agency. So our rights agents, Allison Olson and Monica Meehan, have been licensing rights to books for over 30 years. We grew the agency into a marketplace as a way to bring more independent authors into the fold. My background personally is in self-publishing, so I've really seen firsthand the types of barriers to entry that independent authors have, especially with regard to rights licensing. So we really created DropCap Marketplace as a way to give authors better access to licensing opportunities. But I'll talk about more what licensing opportunities actually mean since this is our 101 session. So what are subsidiary rights? Essentially, subsidiary rights are a bundle of rights that you as a copyright holder of your book own and can control and can monetize. So one of the types of rights that we work with a lot are international rights. These are your translation rights, sometimes also called foreign rights. When a publisher in Japan, for example, sees a book that's been published in the US, they can go to the author or publisher or whoever owns the rights to that book and say, I'd like to license it. There's typically a term for the license, which I'll get into in a little bit. And the Japanese publisher does all of the work to translate the book, produce it, and print a Japanese edition that they then market and sell in their territory. So that's what we mean when we talk about translation rights licensing or foreign rights licensing. Translated titles make up, we estimate, about 35% of global book revenue. And most of those translations are going from English to other languages. So here in the US, we have a really robust publishing market, as I'm sure you all know. Other markets around the world are not as mature. So we see a lot of translations flowing from the US to China, for example, or the US to Indonesia or India, where there's a lot of population growth and a big demand for books, but they haven't had as much time as we have here in the US to grow their own author base in their country. That's why there's a lot of translations happening from here to other parts of the world. And authors, independent authors, can definitely take advantage of that. Another type of subsidiary right that we see very commonly licensed is audiobooks. Audiobooks have been growing dramatically year over year. And we are now seeing a lot of audiobook companies are coming to us or coming to other agents and saying, you know, we're going into new markets, we're releasing a lot of new books, show me what you have. So there's a huge demand for audio. And that would be an instance where maybe you've published your book in print, maybe you've published it in a digital format, and an audiobook publisher comes along and says, I'd like to license this to create the audio version. And in that instance, the audiobook publisher is going to pay for the creation of the audio. They're going to pay for everything that goes into marketing it and selling it. And then you as the author don't have any upfront costs, but you will get an advance on future royalties, and then you get a percentage of future sales. So it's very much like a traditional publishing contract, but your book already exists in one format, and these companies are looking to license it and create different formats or different languages or different editions. Now, of course, there's TV and film licensing. This is kind of, the dream come true for most authors, and it's, it doesn't happen for very many people, but I like to talk about it. One of my favorite examples is the book The Martian, which I know a lot of people have heard of. That was a really popular movie a few years ago, the one where Matt Damon gets stuck on Mars. I like to mention this one because that book started, or that movie started life as a self-published book. The author originally published the book on his website as a serial, and from his website postings, it was licensed, that content was licensed for an audiobook version from Podium, which is now a huge audiobook company. I think at the time they were smaller. So that was just a really wonderful success story for that author, where he got picked up from his website into audio. Then he on his own published it on Amazon, and then of course we know it blew up. It got a deal from, I think it was Penguin Random House, and then obviously it was optioned for film and turned into a movie. So that type of success story is out there, and it is coming from independent authors, because we know that you don't need to go through a major publishing house to have an amazing book that has a lot of potential to be licensed into other formats. And then real quick, we have other types of subsidiary rights like book club editions, serials, large print formats. These, in my experience, are typically sub-rights that are being added on to other deals. So if we, for example, we could do a license where we're licensing the book into French, and then they're adding French audio on top of that. And then they might say, well, we want the option to do these other subsidiary formats in French. So we want to be able to do a French book club edition, and that would all be part of one contract. So that in a nutshell, and again, feel free to drop any questions in here, because I know it's a lot of information. I'll be happy to circle back on. That's what subsidiary rights are. So how do rights agents work? I'm going to talk about how a traditional agent works, and then towards the end, we'll get into more how DropCap specifically works. But I like to give you a good overview of just kind of what the industry is like. So when an author has published a book, um, or they have a manuscript and they're looking to get the book published, they may seek out an agent, and the agent has to agree to represent the author and will sign a representation agreement with that author. Now, agents also sign agreements with publishers as well to represent their lists. So these agents are sometimes part of a larger company. They're sometimes working on their own, but essentially they create a list of books or authors or publishers that they represent, and they will then go out to their network of other agents and other publishers, and they will pitch those books to those other agents and publishers. A lot of that pitching takes place at the international book fairs that occur throughout the year. So there's a major one in Frankfurt in October. There's a major book fair in London next week, actually. It usually takes place in March or April. There's book fairs in Bologna, Shanghai, Beijing. And this is where the publishing community meets throughout the year to really conduct a lot of business. You'd think that in this day and age, more of it would take place online, and a lot of it does, but there's really no substitute for being able to maintain relationships face to face, and to even be able to pick up books and feel them and see them and make your acquisitions decisions in that way. So agents are going to these fairs, connecting, pitching the books that they represent. And after all of that effort, they hopefully negotiate some contracts. In my experience, when we go to book fairs, you're typically meeting with someone and they're saying which books they're interested in seeing more about. We all go home, we send out copies of the PDFs for those agents or editors to review. And if it's something that they're interested in, they'll come back to us and say, yes, I'd like to make an offer to license this book. That's when the agent who's representing the author comes in and says, okay, well, we want to negotiate on these terms. We like this, but we want to make sure of this. And eventually an agreement is reached, the contract is signed, and an advance is paid. So on that note, I like to talk a little bit about what goes into a foreign rights contract. Now, I've had authors come to me that have received an offer from a publisher, and they never even thought about licensing their rights at all. They just kind of receive an offer out of the blue, and then they start researching agencies because they want to make sure that this is a good offer for them. It's a good contract. So I like to give a bit of what you should look for in a contract in case that situation occurs for you. So the main parts are the terms, the payment, and then the logistics around how the book is going to be published. So things to think about: how long is the license valid? For us, it's typically 5 years. Some publishers may want 7 to 10. We like to keep it shorter because then that gives you the opportunity to hopefully renew the license and get another advance against royalties. What are the languages and territories? So this is a great thing to keep in mind. In some cases, it's really cut and dry. If it's a license for Korea, the rights are typically going to be sold in South Korea. They could be sold worldwide, which means that that Korean publisher could technically sell a Korean edition in the US. But usually it's going to be confined to the country that speaks the language. That gets, that's a little different if the language is Spanish, for example. That's where you want to really pay attention to what territories are you giving them permission to publish into. So if it's a Spanish publisher, are you giving them permission just to distribute the book in Spain? Are you giving them worldwide permission? Are you giving, if the publisher is in Mexico, are you giving them permission to publish throughout all of Latin America, throughout all of the world? So these are the kind of the details that we work through when we do a contract. And then which formats is the book being licensed into? So a lot of times it's print, digital, sometimes audio. That's all going to be outlined in the contract. Payment, very important. What is the advance and royalty rate? That's one of the major negotiating points that we do when we get an offer from a potential licensee. That almost always they give us an offer and we come back with something else because we want to raise the amount that you're going to be making on that license. When are reports and payments due? Typically that's annually. So this is very different if you're used to Amazon and seeing your book sales in real time. It in the rest of the world, the rest of the industry, it's much, much slower. We're getting our royalty reports yearly and they're showing sales for the prior year. So I believe our deadline right now is March, end of March, to get royalty reports for 2024. And we will see those reports trickle in throughout the first half of the year. It's a lot slower moving than a lot of independent authors are used to. So I like to kind of give fair warning about that. And then logistics. What is the publication timeline? A lot of times we're seeing 12 to 18 months. Again, very different if you're used to things moving more quickly as an independently published author. If it's a foreign publisher and they're adhering to spring and fall releases and they acquire your book in the fall, they may want to release it the next fall. Obviously, it needs to have time to be translated and all of that, but they're also going to be positioning it for a specific release date. So publication timeline can take up to a year or more at times. We see it happen quicker, but that's something to be aware of. I like to mention this one too. What happens if sales thresholds are not met? This is a really big sticking point for me because I often don't see this clause in contracts that are sent directly to an author, but it's a clause that an agent will make sure is in your contract if you have an agent. So what this means is if your book is licensed to a foreign publisher and they don't obtain a certain number of sales, those rights revert back to you. So you don't want to license to a publisher and then they don't sell any of your book, but then you're still tied up with them for 5 years. You want to make sure those rights go back to you if your book is not selling with them. And with us in particular, we have a few other instances in our contracts where we say when and how rights revert to the author if the foreign publisher isn't performing. Great. So moving on. So yeah, I just want to talk a minute about DropCap Marketplace before we get to questions. Like I said, the reason that we created DropCap Marketplace was because we saw how difficult it was for independent authors to gain access to the decision makers that are licensing books. If you if you don't have agency representation, it's very hard to get your book in front of the people that are going to license it. You kind of just, you sit back, and occasionally an author gets an offer from a publisher in another country. A lot of times they're like, is this a scam? Is this for real? And then they go in search of an agent. Very easy to find an agent when you already have an offer in hand. But we wanted a way for authors to be able to list their books, test the waters, like see if there is going to be international interest before you spend like a lot of time and resources on trying to promote your book on your own, internationally. And also give you a way to gauge that interest without having to enter into any sort of exclusivity agreement with DropCap, or with an agent in general. So that's very important. DropCap, when you list your book on the marketplace, DropCap is not acting as your agent. We are giving you a way to expose your book to our network of over 2,700 rights buyers that are using our marketplace to find content. But if you get a rights inquiry, it's still up to you at that point whether you would like to use DropCap as your agent, or if you want to pursue that inquiry on your own, or if you have another agent even that you're using. So that was really important to us, to keep that platform agnostic, so that authors can come in and promote their book and gain exposure, but you're not locked into using us as an agent. Though obviously many of our authors do choose to use us as their agent for the reasons that I outlined about the some of those contract pitfalls earlier. So a few ways that our marketplace is special. We've tried to make it a really affordable way to gauge interest in your book. A question that I get a lot is, how do I know if there's going to be international interest in my book? And my answer is, I don't know. Like, I can give you some ideas of trends that we're seeing right now, but until you actually put your book out there in front of the people who are licensing it, there really isn't a way. We don't have a crystal ball. There's no way for us to know if there's going to be interest. So part of our philosophy is to make sure it's not, costing an exorbitant amount to be able to put your book in front of people. um, we offer options for additional promotion, and I think this is really important. One of our, I feel, most high value marketing opportunities for our authors is to actually have your book at one of our international book fairs. So this is where we bring your book to London or Frankfurt, and we're actually able to put the physical copy of that book in front of our rights buyers, which can, you always remember the stuff that you can see and feel better. So I feel like that gives you a good advantage when you're able to do that. And then we're making sure to provide some real-time engagement reporting. So when you have an account on the marketplace, you're able to run reports to see what types of interactions are going on with your book, and that can help you gauge, is this working? Are there things that I could update with my listing? That type of thing, so that you have an idea of what's going on. One of the ways that we match books with rights buyers is, we have an algorithm that is looking at what type of book has been listed, and then what the buying habits of the rights buyers are that are in and utilizing the marketplace. So I think this is important, because we're not just telling our rights buyers, here, go into this directory and find books that you like. We're really trying to use technology to only put the books in front of those rights buyers that we feel are going to be of interest to them. So if you have a children's book, we're not promoting it to people who buy business books. We're only promoting it to the group of buyers that we think there's, potential for success. On top of that, we're doing, a lot of social media, email campaigns, monthly newsletters, blog posts. You can see some of the examples here. Some of that is, more editorial, where our content team is kind of picking and choosing books that they want to feature. But when you list your book on DropCap Marketplace, we are going to promote it in our weekly pitch emails to buyers that match the criteria that fit your book. So a bit about what's included, and I want to make sure we have time for questions, so forgive me if I'm speaking a little quickly here. Um, when you're signing up for Dropcat Marketplace, you are getting a custom landing page for each of your books. This is really important because uh, what what you see on Amazon, for example, with a book listing is what readers are most interested in, not necessarily what rights buyers most interested in. So we're making sure that awards and recognition, sales, even just the specs for the book, like the trim size and the page count, that sort of thing, are front and center, as well as information about the author. So you're getting a custom author page. I always try to make sure that authors understand how important it is to also promote themselves as part of this process. When a publisher is licensing your book, they're investing in you as an author as well as in your book. Because they're putting the money in to publish it into their market. They want to know who's behind it. If you have any special credentials, any awards or recognition that are separate from your book, it's still important to showcase those. Um, so we're doing a round of pitching to relevant buyers in our network. And by relevant, I mean, like I said, if it's a children's book, we're not pitching it to the business book buyers. And then we're doing continuous matching as new buyers join our network. Books are available in our advanced search engine. So this is where if a buyer is looking for a specific niche topic, they can go and search our database and pull up books that are of interest to them. Those additional opportunities and reporting, like I talked about. And then we're also just rolling out a 12-month educational course. So when you sign up for DropCap, you're going to start getting monthly emails. I promise they're not like annoying. They're meaningful. And these emails are really designed to give you an education around rights and around what you can be doing to improve your listings and improve, domestically in a way that like can help gain notice for your book. So, for example, I think one of our email series is awards that you can apply for and how you can leverage those awards to attract interest. So, we want you, when you join DropCap, we want you to have your book available, obviously, but to also make sure you're learning about rights and what you can do to increase your chances of being noticed by international buyers. So again, thank you for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it. I'm going to get to some of the questions that we have here. But as a thank you, I want to offer you a 10% off coupon code if you do choose to work with DropCap. The coupon code is lunch for our lunchtime webinar here. And I'm going to hop over to the chat and see what questions we have. Okay, so from Patricia, she asked, does DropCap handle subsidiary rights for all subrights mentioned? Yes, yeah, we can handle any type of subrights. I would say our specialty really is foreign rights because that's what our agents' careers have kind of been built on. But we've done all kinds of different licensing deals, and we can handle pretty much anything. Let's see. Next one is Susan asked, is there a general time frame from foreign interest in a book to signing a contract? That is a really good question. I should have covered that. Um, this timeline can be longer than any of us like. And typically, I like to say that 6 months isn't unusual. Um, when a buyer first expresses interest in your book, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes before a deal can actually take place. Sometimes, if it's an editor, for example, they need to take all of the material that we provide them through DropCap Marketplace and present that to their team. So there might be other editors, they might make joint decisions. They're going to look at their acquisition schedule for the year. They're going to look at their publishing schedule. They're going to look at their budget. So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes from when say we meet with someone in Frankfurt and they say, yeah, I'm going to look at the PDF for this book. So Frankfurt was in October. We're still closing deals now in March from interest that was shown in October. So some of it is going to happen quickly, some of it can take a long time. One thing we do is when interest has been shown in a book, we are following up with that buyer every 30 days. So we're making sure that we're staying on top of them and that they're not going to forget about the book or forget about us. So that you can, rest assured that if it's going to be a yes, like we're going to make sure that moves forward. Um, I will also just mention the time frame from when you list a book, even before there's interest, to signing a contract can be a very long time. Again, this is a really slow moving industry. As someone who is, more involved in tech, used to things moving fast, it can be frustrating at times. But I'll give you an example. We represent a publisher called Familius. They produce a lot of really nice children's books, and there's a book that they published, I want to say in 2021, called "Why Do Evergreens Keep Their Leaves?" And we've pitched this book many times. Um, it's time. When it first was released, we had a good year of just pitching this book to everyone in our network. We did get a few licenses for it. I believe we just got a French license for it. Now I know we pitched this publisher before, but that's it's been 4 years since this book came out, and I'm sure that it was presented to the publisher that in France that has ultimately picked it up several times over the years, if not more. And finally, now they've decided to license it. Now, maybe they liked it before, but they didn't have the budget for it. We don't always really know those details, but I would say for authors, it it can take a long time. This is one of the reasons why we do an annual membership for DropCap rather than something monthly, because really it's not, I wouldn't expect something to happen within like a month or two. It really is a process where rights buyers need to see your book multiple times, and and sometimes they'll see it and it's not right for them at one point, and then it will be later. So um, what is the percentage that DropCap takes on licenses? So again, this is only when we negotiate the license. If you're listing your book on DropCap and you get an inquiry, you can choose not to use us as your agent, and then the only thing you're paying for is the annual fee, the annual subscription. But if DropCap does act as your agent, we receive a 20% commission on that license, and that's a fairly industry standard number. One thing I like to mention is that, because sometimes authors are saying, I should just work directly with the publisher. I don't need to go through an agent because I don't want to give up commission. If you're working with an agent, we can typically get your advance higher because we know the market. We know what that publisher typically offers. If they're offering you something that's under market value, we can help raise that price. So we're kind of paying for ourselves in that way. And then we're going to also make sure that other protections are in the contract are in place for you. So I always recommend working with an agent, even if it's not us. And 20% is going to be a really standard amount that you're going to see. Let's see. So Vicky asked, yeah, hi Vicky. We're super excited to bring Vicky's book to the Bologna Book Fair. What kind of exposure does this get for my book and the others you have there? That's a great question as well. DropCap is unique amongst agencies because at the Bologna Children's Book Fair and at the Frankfurt Book Fair, we exhibit with a booth. A lot of agents meet in the Rights Center and they'll have a number of books with them to show, but a lot of the books that they're pitching are still going to be on paper rather than actually having the physical copies. We think, especially for children's books, like what you see in Bologna, it's so important for the buyers to be able to see those books that one time a year, because you are going to get a much better sense for the quality and the illustrations. And sometimes we're surprised we get a book and it's tiny. We're like, oh, we didn't realize it was so tiny. So we feel that having a booth at these book fairs, and if you are able to participate in that, it is an additional cost, but I think it's well worth it because there's over 100 scheduled meetings that we usually have. And then we also have walk-in traffic from there's thousands of people that attend every day. So they're able to walk by our booth and something catches their eye. So we typically have, I just to throw a number out there, on top of the 100 scheduled meetings, maybe 30 or 40 walk-in meetings as well. And that's all dedicated, like they're just looking at our books. So I think the level of exposure is really valuable, and just the level of one-on-one FaceTime is really valuable. So Patricia asked, I'm a client for foreign rights. Do you send a report on interest expressed by publishers? So we don't typically send reports on interest unless you're participating in a book fair. So if you participate in a book fair, we are going to send a report, like a post-fair report that talks about what type of interest we saw specifically from that book fair. The rest of the time, as a client, you are able to log into your dashboard, and there is an activity report that you can run at any time that shows interest. So feel free, like if you want to log in once a month, see what the interest was for that month, you can always do that. I have thought, maybe we should like proactively send something monthly. So I'm glad that you asked that, because I'd like to add that to kind of our to-do list. But know that you can always go in and see it on your own. All right. Well, that was all the questions. We're at 30 minutes here. I do always just like to drop my email in the chat. If there's anything you think of that you wanted to ask about, please feel free to email me, lindsay@dropcap.com. And then again, if you're not already a client with us, I love to see people that are already working with us, and this is a great way to get your questions answered too. But if you'd like to start working with us, if you'd like to list your book on the marketplace, make sure to use that coupon code lunch to get 10% off. And have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.